Rockfin.
I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right. Welcome. Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And you can catch me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. I'm switching it up. And Friday. So welcome. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter. And I want to welcome our special guest tonight. We're going to talk about healthcare before I get into tonight's news stories. So big shout out to Andre Stackhouse from Whole Washington and Savage Joy from Medicare for All. Welcome, guys.
Thanks. I always love joining you. However, you know I'm going to say you're going to get that damn doobie-doobie-doo in my head for the next 3 days.
Sorry.
You always do.
Thanks for having me on, Sabrina.
Welcome. Okay, first, this is how we're going to do this. Andre has some updates about Whole Washington and their ballot initiative for healthcare for people in Washington state. I'm going to go to him and have him discuss that. Then I'm going to go to Savage Joy for updates about the March for Medicare for All in DC this summer. And then we're going to open up the floor here and have a discussion about what is the best way or the best path for healthcare, whether it's through the states or whether it's national. So, Andre, I'm going to go to you first. What's going on with Whole Washington and your ballot initiative access? I'm going to go ahead and add this to the stream.
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on. It's been a hell of a year. And I don't remember exactly the last time I came on the show, but a lot of the last media appearances we did, we had still not filed yet. So we were working on the legislation itself. And I'm really happy that we've filed the best version of the Washington Health Trust that we've ever had. It's been improved in a number of ways. And we are now out there gathering signatures every day, every week, all across the state of Washington. And so if you go to wholewashington.org/sign, you can see a map, and that'll be places where you can go by and you can sign, or you can pick up a few sheets and collect signatures. And if you go to wholewashington.org/events, you will see that we are hitting up all of the best events in the state. We did Solstice last weekend. We're doing Pride next weekend. So it's just a great way to get out there into the community, talk to people about healthcare, see if they want to put it on the ballot. And a lot of them do. So it's great to be here on the show to get the word out. And I also wanted to announce a few exciting endorsements that we've gotten recently. So Physicians for Social Responsibility, Washington chapter has endorsed, and we also got the largest county in Washington state, King County Democrats. They have endorsed us, and that's the county that the Seattle metropolitan area is in. But I grew up in LD1, which is out in the suburbs, and I was really happy to get to speak back at my home LD, present Whole Washington, and they have now endorsed. So we continue to build our coalition and gather signatures out there, and we are just really happy to be bringing this issue to so many people.
Awesome. And how many signatures are you required to get for the ballot initiative?
So we're required to get about 325,000. The goal we've set for ourselves is 400,000, which adds about a 23% cushion for potentially invalid signatures or, people who maybe aren't registered to vote or, they're out of state, but they signed anyway. So it includes a cushion for that.
Awesome. And how many signatures do you have so far?
So the last time that we did a count, we're at about 13,000.
Okay, great. All right, Joy, you're up next. March for Medicare for All this summer in DC. Let me go ahead and put your page up here. And then I know there's a screenshot you sent me as well announcing people. So take it away.
Yeah. Our march is July 30th, DC, and we're not announcing speakers yet. We've got some great ones, but we do have an announcement tonight that we are doing a fundraiser, and we have some pretty amazing people. That's what the meme or promo or whatever is for, if you want to share that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. And Eric, if you can do me a favor and put links to both of these in the chat for the Medicare for All March and for Whole Washington's page. I'm going to go ahead and share this here.
So this is coming up a week from Wednesday. We have, of course, Marianne Williamson, who is my dear friend and one of my biggest supporters, and who is such an ally. We have Jimmy Dore, my dear comrades, Eve Six, John and Max. I can't see you. That's the Banks sisters, Elias. I can't see Jesse Jett, and oh my God, that's awful. I can't.
Yeah.
Oh, Rob Durden.
Yeah, Marianne, Jimmy, Elias, Rob Durden, the Banks sisters, Eve Six, and Jesse Jett. That's Eve Six, the band.
Yeah, they're my comrades. They're huge supporters.
Time, Eve Six.
What's that?
Closing time, Eve Six.
Oh, are you joking?
Closing.
No, Heart in a Blender, Eve Six.
Oh shoot, wrong band.
Eve Six are actually good.
Oh man, don't tell him I said that. Is this the fundraiser that I'm coming to? I forget.
Mm-hmm.
I'm signed for a lot of things. Okay.
Yeah, so there's more people than are on this promo. You and JB. And basically, we just really need help with this fundraiser. We are 100% volunteer. We were told even a wheelchair ramp, ADA accessible, is $2,000 to rent.
Yes.
Our ASL interpreters are over 1,000. Just the bare bones of what we need to make it, accessible and everything. I mean, it's such an expense. So we really, really need people's help to help us pull this off. Also, it's not just July 30th. We are all going from all across the country on the Wednesday before. We have some civil disobedience, some direct action, some disruption. We're also doing a bag lunches, mutual aid for the homeless people in the area. We have so much planned. Of course, I'm not giving details of the other things I just mentioned because, Popo are going to be riding our asses as it is. But yeah, it's going to be a week of action.
Awesome. Let me go ahead and share this here. Yeah, so looking forward to all these things. So yeah, I'll be at the fundraiser event too. And yes, I'm familiar with the wheelchair ramps. I had to get one for an event one time, and it's thousands of dollars just to get a ramp. It's expensive.
They said, well, you could get one for 1,000, but it's not ADA. Well, right. You want me to have her fall? It's incredible, really.
All right. So let's get into the discussion about state versus national. Now, I know both of you obviously are pro, Medicare for all. You want everybody to have health care. What seems to be the disagreement? Because I've seen conversations kind of go back and forth on Twitter, and I figured it would just be better to have this discussion like in person or virtually per se. What seems to be the disagreement with state universal healthcare, Medicare for all, or the national way? And I'm opening it up to the floor to both of you.
So I would like to, I guess, start by saying that for many people, there is not a disagreement there. And I think that you can see that based on the framing of certain conversations around it, right? So while some people have framed this conversation as a debate on state versus national, you won't see me, you won't see a lot of people feel that it needs to be that way. So I think that, I just want to say a few things to, make sure that are clear at the beginning, which is that the first is that, I'm really not here to debate that like state by state is better than federal. And that should certainly not be something that I'm asked to defend. And the other is just that, I think that when we're talking about something as big as healthcare, we're talking about millions of lives, right? And movements of thousands and greater. And so it really needs to be, strictly about the policy and the strategy. And so that's what I'm here to discuss. And mostly that there does not need to be a conflict between these two paths to getting people healthcare justice, universal healthcare across the United States.
I actually do not believe in universal health care. That's actually what Biden says universal health care. Obamacare is referred to as universal health care. I support national improved Medicare for all. It is a very different thing. And I think, the term universal health care just gets thrown around. And it's used for so many different things. It could be a public option. It could be anything. There's no set definition of that. So I think using that term is actually very misleading. As far as, whole Washington, I know you guys promote Medicare for all, state by state. However, Sabby, can you bring up that screenshot from, I believe his name is Mark? Matt.
From Mark. Yeah, just one second. Let me share here.
So we have always contended that what you guys are pushing is not Medicare for all. No, that's not it.
Okay.
It's from Twitter.
Is it this one?
No, it's a tweet. It's some guy named Mark. Yeah, there it goes above.
This?
No, it's a tweet.
Oh, it's a tweet. Oh, hold on.
No, it's up higher. Okay, now go down. Go down.
Oh.
You're going up.
Okay.
Go down.
No. I think it's further up.
No, it's not. I just sent it to you, actually.
Oh, you just sent it. Hold on. This one?
No, it's a tweet. Like it's literally a tweet.
Yeah, I don't
There it goes. Just past it. No. Below.
Oh.
Here it goes. Okay. So I can't read it. Sabby, can you read what that says?
So this says, no, they don't. Whole Washington is very aware that establishing the Whole Washington Healthcare Trust is not Medicare for all. They just keep working to elevate Medicare for all while doing their own work. Y'all are mad. They keep supporting your cause while you insult and attack them.
So I tagged Whole Washington and asked for a response to this. This person, I believe he's a signature captain. I'm not sure. He talks about getting signatures. he stated in bold, big letters, you guys are aware it is not Medicare for all. I tagged you guys and said, what was your response? Nobody responded. So would you like to respond to this? That one of your people literally said, we know it's not Medicare for all, but you guys do say it is all the time.
Okay, so I am here to have this conversation. And I would say that part of what I came out here in the framing of this conversation was that I'm not that interested in talking about individual people. Okay, so Mark is a volunteer for Whole Washington. Mark is a wonderful volunteer for Whole Washington, helped organize the march last summer. But Mark does not speak for the Whole Washington campaign as a whole. And no one person does that. But I mean, this sort of thing reminds me so much of is Bernie Sanders a Democrat or not? Is Bernie Sanders is a socialist?
This is actually
he's not
your organization, someone who is in your organization saying, you guys, he's not speaking for himself. He didn't say, I believe it's not Medicare for all. He said, you guys. So if you want to deflect, that's on you. But my question is valid.
I'm not deflecting. I think that you should not interrupt me. So I am, as I was saying, Mark has expressed that he does not use this while he signature gathers. Whole Washington has not said that we are not Medicare for all. But obviously, Whole Washington is not the same thing as Bernie Sanders' bill in the Senate or Pramila's bill in the House. And those two things are not the same as each other. And they're not the same as HR 676. Medicare for all is really part of a greater movement for healthcare justice. And Whole Washington, I think, absolutely can be considered statewide Medicare for all. But if it's something that you feel is important to distinguish, here's what Whole Washington is. Whole Washington is state single payer. It is universal single payer healthcare that covers dental, vision, hearing, reproductive health, mental health, gender affirming care. There is zero monthly premiums. There are zero deductibles. There are zero co-payments. This detaches employment from health insurance, ensuring that you keep it regardless of if you lose your job or you lose your home or you get a divorce or you are not a citizen. So we're talking about getting 500,000 people universal single payer healthcare. If I don't care if some people don't consider it Medicare for all, that is not what's important to me. It is state single payer, and it is universal in the sense that it gets everybody healthcare and does not require them to have supplemental private health insurance or out-of-pocket spending on top of it.
But you support, just to clarify for people watching, Andre, you still support Medicare for all.
Oh, absolutely. And so Whole Washington supports Medicare for all directly. We constantly lobby our federal legislators to co-sponsor Medicare for all. I personally was in a meeting with the staffers of Maria Cantwell and Patty Murray and asked them if they would take a pledge to take no money from pharma or private health insurance. We've sent people to both Medicare for all hearings this summer. If you saw that image of the light projected on the side of the building and it says Medicare for all on it, we paid for that action and made that image go viral. And we organized a march last year, helped finance it, March for Medicare for All. And we always take the opportunities we have to support actions in support of Medicare for All. So both in terms of state policy and state organizing, feeding into the organizing for Medicare for All in an indirect way, we also support it in many direct ways. And I wanted to bring to that to help illustrate that. That's actually part of why I started an organization called Medicare for All Everywhere, which is designed to connect the organizing at state level to federal organizing and put their strategies together in a way that they'll be mutually beneficial to one another. Because I think that that's absolutely the way that we will get Medicare for All, is when we have people mobilized in every state and working together in a coalitional way.
Okay, so Terrence, just really quick here. Terrence Cudney, he's in the chat. He said Bernie's Medicare for All bill is a single payer bill. Whole Washington's bill is a single payer bill.
There's a very big difference with that. Funding. And we'll get to that. But yeah, federal funding, states can't use federal funding. It's a very different thing. States actually have a budget. Federal does not. So whether, a state says it's the same thing does not mean it's going to be enacted into existence. And I have plenty of things I'd like to go over as far as funding.
So the other thing to keep in mind, though, is that states absolutely can spend federal money and do. A lot of healthcare spending comes from federal money. And that would absolutely be the case if Whole Washington's bill were to pass. A significant amount of the funding would come from federal money.
Which you need waivers for. No waivers exist. You would need to go through Congress to get them. So, to break it down, we hear all the time, national is not going to work because we got to go through Congress.
Not for me.
If your bill passes, there are no such things as federal waivers to reallocate, say, Medicare state money to, federal money to state money. It does not exist.
Okay, so let me show something really quick before, and I'll pass it back to you, Joy. On their website, there is a page here that says how we pay for it, and it says with Washington Health Trust, we stop paying deductibles, premiums, copays, medical bills, out-of-network charges, high prescription costs, and then it goes on to say a statewide nonprofit, publicly funded health trust. Will create the largest possible risk pool, create efficiencies, gaining negotiating power, reduce fraud and waste, cut administrative overhead for providers, and save money for everyone. And there's a chart here that explains how they will pay for it. Employers will contribute 10.5% of wages. Employees may contribute up to 2% of wages. Sole proprietors, 2% of earnings, and investors will contribute 8.5% of capital gains.
Okay, so, but back to my point, that is not enough. Back to my point, they are saying that they will be, if you scroll up to the top, it's vague. I don't know. I read it a few times. I'm not understanding it. Right here, this part, I gave you a screenshot. It gives no details. What does it cover? That doesn't tell me how. This gives no details either. So my point is that, and Andre, you did use the words eventually in your Jordan interview. It would eventually pay for it. So I do want to make sure that you guys are being honest. A federal waiver does not exist. It will need Congress, period. So what that means is, even if you guys get the signatures, you guys get on the ballot and it passes, it will not be enacted unless and until a bill is written in Congress, a bill is passed in Congress, and then a bill is passed in Washington state. And I see you shaking your head, and I've spoken with economists, with doctors, and with single payer activists for over 30 years. And there's tons.
We've talked to none of those, of course. So I said we've spoken to none of those, of course. I was saying it sarcastically, just to be clear.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Just for everyone to understand, why would they still have to go through Congress?
Because Congress does not. Okay, so they're talking about using. I mean, in theory, it makes sense. Okay, so we use state money. We pay for Medicare. You know what I mean? We pay for Medicaid. We use state money for these things for the people in our state, right? So in theory, it makes sense that, hey, if we don't need that shit, we'll just take that money and use it to help pay for what we're doing. That is not a possibility. It needs to pass what's called a federal waiver, which then would reallocate federal funds to state funds. There is no reallocating. Let's just take money from this to help. No, you need it to go through Congress. It's not, and I have examples of states where ballot initiatives were passed and didn't happen because of things like this. So I can give those examples after, Andre, if you want to respond.
I'd love to. Thank you. So, few things. The first is you said that it's not enough. I recommend that anyone who thinks that it's not enough go to our website, go to the information section at the top, and you can read the analysis from Dr. Friedman. There was also a study commissioned by the Washington State Healthcare Authority, both of which find that state single payer would save between on the lower end, $5 billion, and on the upper end, $13 billion a year. And remember, that's while covering everyone. That's while expanding what's covered by Medicare. And so that's the one thing to understand is that we pay into private health insurance, right? We pay into Medicare, Medicaid. We pay a ton for our healthcare. We pay twice as much as any other country. So we know that we can pay for it because we're already paying for it. This reduces the total cost of health spending in Washington. It's just saying that instead of that coming out of our pockets when we get defibrillated in the emergency room, that should come through the taxation system where it will be graduated, where it will be less for people who make less money, where it will be stable, and where it will be a lot less disruptive and not throw people into bankruptcy. Now, on the topic of the waivers, we have a transition plan, and our transition plan allows us to do this without the waivers. So the first thing is that we can totally pay for this without federal money. We can both cover everyone and pay for it without federal money. Obviously, we would like to have the federal money, but that's why we allow the bill to be passed without the waivers. We have a Universal Healthcare Commission in Washington State. It's a permanent institution that can go and acquire the waivers. And the idea that these waivers don't exist, it's a Medicare waiver and it's an ERISA waiver, okay? The framework for these exists. The Affordable Care Act did not exclude single-payer healthcare. It left states the ability to create a single-payer system, and we effectively are just walking that path. But the important thing is to not hold up our ability to get people healthcare and to enact single-payer healthcare in Washington on federal processes if we don't have to. We can pass it. We can begin to cover people. Everyone in Washington State will be eligible for this system on day one, okay? And if we can start to give that healthcare to people, then we can acquire the waivers and make the funding, get the federal money for it. But we don't have to wait for a federal government that has all sorts of ways to derail legislation. I mean, legislation does not just get derailed when it's a ballot initiative or when it's going through a legislature, state or federal, okay? We've seen how the federal $15 minimum wage was taken down by a parliamentarian. Everything that we talk about, from voting rights to a Green New Deal, apparently can't happen because of the filibuster. We constantly have to hear what Joe Manchin's opinion is. With the ballot initiative, we are talking about a process where the governor cannot veto it. The legislature cannot keep it off the ballot. In a sense, it is forcing a vote on single-payer healthcare. And we want to do this in a way where there are no filibusters, no parliamentarians, no vetoes.
So I'd actually like to respond to that in the respect that you said a governor can't, repeal it and what have you. I actually have an example from 2 years ago. So in Missouri,
that's not Washington State. The governor can't veto it in Washington State.
Okay, we're talking state by state. So I'm talking Missouri because you have a 50-state strategy, correct?
50 states and the United States, yes.
Okay. And in Missouri, that's what happened. A ballot initiative passed in 2020 for expanded Medicaid. Then what happened was let me find my notes and see if I could read them. Then what happened was, when it passed, it won like 53 to 46%. So it passed by, by a bit. And people were in favor of it. Then when it passed, the governor and his cabinet decided to say, no, we don't want to enact it. And they literally just didn't. No ramifications for the governor whatsoever. So the people took it to Cole County Court, which was their one particular county. It failed. They held up the governor's decision. That was 2021. Then they had to go to the state Supreme Court, in which it was finally overturned. Now, they went 2 years without getting that Medicaid expansion that was passed on that initiative, on that ballot state initiative. And again, no ramifications for the governor and his administration for not doing that. So when we're talking state by state, we're not talking just Washington. And that's an example of how it can happen. Now, in Washington state, in 2012, there was an instance when Medicaid expansion stopped covering dental. And it was for just budget cuts. All of a sudden, no dental. 560,000 eligible Medicaid patients, if you will. 560,000 eligible people immediately lost their dental care budget. That will never, ever, ever happen on a national plan. There's no budget. It doesn't matter. You could say, oh, we're giving, the MIC 10 more bajillions of dollars, and it doesn't matter. States, if they do not want something to happen, they will cut it. So what guarantee do you guys have? I know you're saying you can fund it without the waivers, and I'm very skeptical of that, but if you can, good for you. But what guarantee do you have then that other services are not going to be cut, which we see every single year in every single state? We see mothers get their discount childcare cut. We see school lunches cut. We see Meals on Wheels cut. We see housing cut. We see all these things cut every single year in every state. And what is your guarantee that these poor and lower class people are not going to suffer more?
So first thing, I just want to reiterate that I am not saying that state by state is superior to federal or that statewide is superior to federal. So on your point, obviously I can concede that we need national improved Medicare for all because it is more fiscally stable. It's more economically stable, and it would get a lot more people health care. Okay, that's not what I came here to argue. I'm on Medicaid in Washington. Okay, I know the limitations of it, but that also proves a very important point here, right? Is that if Washington state was not a Medicaid expansion state, I wouldn't have healthcare right now. I wouldn't be able to be a full-time healthcare activist with healthcare coverage if we hadn't expanded Medicaid. And even though we recognize that state budgets are challenging, right? At the same time, it's currently getting me healthcare. And the idea that, well, Medicaid is imperfect. Medicaid is often underfunded. We should actually be grateful. It would be better if we didn't have Medicaid. And then maybe we could all focus on national Medicare for all, I think is a really bad way of looking at it. I think it is not good strategy. I think healthcare makes us stronger. And I think that if we can pass it here in Washington, we will be stronger for it. We will have a stronger labor movement. We will have stronger workers who can go on strike or leave their job. We will give women the ability to leave their partners if that's something they need to do without worrying about losing their health care. And the idea that, well, sometimes that might be difficult to fund. You know what? It is difficult to fund. But also, we have about 16 billionaires in Washington state. They are worth about $300 billion between all of them. Our plan does not cost more than $66 billion. Okay? This is easy to fund. Gates and Bezos, each of them could fund that and still have tens and tens of billions of dollars. So the idea that we don't have the money to provide this kind of healthcare for the people of Washington, I think, is an underestimation of the people of Washington. I think that we can decide that this is something we want to do, and we can change and make it the way that healthcare is in our state. And I think that that would set a very strong example for the rest of the country.
So I want to mention something to people listening that may have questions about ballot initiatives. So I did a ballot initiative panel on this show, I think it was a couple of months ago, and we mentioned the pros and cons with ballot initiatives. It's important that you know both, right? So the way it kind of works is there are certain states, there's only a number of them, I think like 24 maybe, I forget, I have to go back to that panel episode, but there are certain states in the US that have what are called ballot initiatives, meaning that the people like you and me, if we collect enough signatures, we can put policies on the ballot and the people get to vote on it. So I'll give you an example. Legalizing marijuana, that was a ballot initiative here in Massachusetts. It passed. Ranked choice voting, that was a ballot initiative here in Massachusetts that did not pass. But that's what we're talking about when we talk about ballot initiatives. Now, here's the catch about it. It varies state by state. It's a little bit easier to get a ballot initiative on the actual ballot in like my state, like Massachusetts, than it is like some other states. There was a recent example of what happened in South Dakota in reference to expanding Medicaid. So that was coming up for the ballot this November, was a ballot initiative to expand Medicaid in South Dakota. So what the political leadership in charge decided to do was to implement a measure that would make it more difficult for ballot initiatives to pass in South Dakota because they did not want to expand Medicaid. So that was actually on the ballot for June. It failed. Thankfully, the people voted against it. So that Medicaid expansion policy will be on the ballot this November, and most likely it's probably going to pass. But there's pros and cons that go along with ballot initiatives. Now, that being said, I think the big question here is, should states like Andre's that are able to do ballot initiatives, should they be able to do that and alongside at the same time have the rest of us or all of us fight for Medicare for all as well? And I want to open that question up to both of you.
I'd like to actually respond to what he said first, what Andre said. So as far as, you stated on Jordan's interview and kind of loosely here that Bezos and what the hell is his name? Gates live in Washington state. However, Bezos actually moved to Texas some time ago. And we know that billionaires, when any of their capital is threatened, they're going to pick up and move. So to one of their million other houses. So, the fact that you are counting on that to get some of the revenue is concerning. So that's just one thing. As far as, ballot initiatives, yes, 24 states do not have them, mine included in Pennsylvania. Also, Puerto Rico and DC are not states. All the territories do not have them as well. So there's certainly a misconception as far as, well, we could just do it state by state. It does not work that way. All states have different representatives, different constituencies, different ballot access. So that is something that is a constant, misconception. You bring up cannabis, and that's one of the biggest things we always hear. We'll legalize it state by state, just like cannabis. Cool. Cannabis has been, People have been fighting to legalize cannabis for over 100 years. The first state legalized in California, and that was in 1995. So here we are 27 years later, and 18 states are legal. We don't have time for that shit. Furthermore, cannabis brings revenue to states. Healthcare costs revenue. So that that angle needs to be just dropped. It doesn't help. It actually hurts. People trying to sell the state by state. As far as should people do both? Look, I'm going to be honest right now. I have never, ever said, don't vote for that. Don't sign that. Never. Not once. And I don't know anyone on my team who has either. The things I say is, it's not Medicare for all. Be transparent and, things like that. And fight for national, like, as a priority. That's an issue to me. When 10 out of 10 posts are Washington, 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 no, you are not making national a priority. I heard you talk about people going to D.C. They were holding whole Washington signs. This is not a priority, and it's your lives. You guys do what you want. Well, what my point is that there are no asterisks. All means all. Healthcare is a human right means every single human has a right. Every human, not just this part. So, if Washington State has 7.5 million people, and the United States has 329.5 million people, so you're fighting for 2.2% of people. That is incrementalism. That is breadcrumbs. That in no way helps people of color, women, the disabled. That is inequality. It's inequity. And that is the problem. People like myself in the disabled community who are never represented by whole Washington, I find it really upsetting that, it's very exclusionary. Your state is 4% Black, $77,000 median income. That's not all states. It's not. And it's very privileged, quite frankly, to focus on that instead of all. Now, if you guys want to do Washington. But the fact that you focus on it is what bothers me.
So okay, just can I do this really quick, Andre? These two chats here. Thanks for the super chat, Ricky. What happens when a nation's sick/disabled people move to one state? What happens if all the wealthy change their primary address? Thank you for that super chat, and that actually leads into this one as well. Lauren, thanks for the super chat. Those billionaires can change their primary residence as soon as this passes. You can't count on that for funding. Thoughts?
Yes. So. A few things. I think saying, I think that people should vote for this and it's good, but also it's incredibly privileged. It's racial inequality.
To vote for it. I just say don't tell them not to vote for it.
So I want to just reiterate again that I am not advocating for state by state, and I am not advocating for state over federal. And then I guess to answer those questions, I think that it is incorrect analysis that we are in a hostage situation with our billionaires. Okay. I think that it is very convenient to billionaires for folks to think that we need them for jobs. We need them for money. And if we didn't have them, we would just be screwed, and they're going to pack up and leave, and we're going to miss them. I think that if the billionaires in this state were to have left, we might have a better tax code. I think that we might have better labor laws. There's a lot of ways in which that these things are complicated. They're also not just here for like a coincidence, okay? We have a very strong tech sector here. We have very strong education here. there's a lot of reasons why people want to be here. We are they would not be able to build their businesses and their wealth without us. And that is why they are here. And we are just going to cut a better deal with them. But again, I am not here to argue that state is better than federal. And I don't believe that, like, I do believe that healthcare is a human right of all people, right? And so my question is, why shouldn't I fight for that for my friends and my neighbors and myself and my state as well as my country? And yes, there's a border around Washington state. There's also a border around the United States. Medicare for all, it would be like saying, hey, how privileged is it for us to talk about Medicare for all getting coverage for Americans when there are people in Africa, right, and South America and Southeast Asia who have it so much worse than us? We can't talk about incrementalism passing healthcare for the United States. We need healthcare for all, because all means all. It's a human right. And, you know, when we're talking about Medicare for all, how are we going to pass that? That is a question I would really like to hear answered. How are we going to get it? Because, you know, Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell have not co-sponsored Medicare for all, and we are fighting to get them to co-sponsor it. And I think it would be great progress if we could get Patty Murray and Maria Cantwell to co-sponsor Medicare for all. But that would get exactly 0 people healthcare, okay? So whether we're talking about a march or a strike or a die-in, by the way, I did a die-in last summer, right? Whether we're talking about any of these actions that get 0 people healthcare, they are incremental steps at best towards Medicare for all. On the other hand, whole Washington is an incremental step towards Medicare for all that gets 500,000 people healthcare, that establishes single-payer healthcare in the United States and will demonstrate its superiority. I just like to, you know, we've talked about how legislation has failed at the ballot, how it fails in legislatures. Medicare for all brought down the likes of Harry Truman, Bernie Sanders. This is a long fight that has we have lost all of this time. We have lost this fight, but we need to keep moving forward, and it's just imperative that we recognize the work that's come before and we take the steps that we can towards establishing it in the United States. And that's the thing I was trying to remember for a second there. I mean, people need to remember that the Affordable Care Act came from Massachusetts, right?
Yep.
And when there's federal reform, the states have great influence over that. And, you know, it's often the observation of the right that the states are very important. Like the left gives up on the states all the time, right? But there's a famous quote by Milton Friedman, which is that in a time of a crisis, which we are in a crisis, but in times of crisis, the ideas that prevail come from the ideas that are lying around. I'm paraphrasing, right? But basically that when there's a time for change, crisis often creates an opportunity for change. But when things change, it comes from the ideas that are lying around. We are trying to put single-payer healthcare on the table so that it is an idea that can be picked up and taken. We recognize the incredible influence that the states have had on federal policy and on the lives of millions of people. And so does the private health insurance industry, so does the pharmaceutical industry, so does the Republican Party, which is why they never leave the states behind. They fight so hard for every race in state legislatures. They derail legislation at state level. And often the reason that we're told state single payer will not work is because the medical industrial complex will come at it so hard and spend so many billions of dollars. And yet we're also told in many cases that state single payer hurts federal single payer. And so if we can agree that state single payer campaigns do not hurt federal single payer, then I think we have nothing to disagree about. But if that is not something we agree about, then I want to know why the enemies of Medicare for all, like the pharmaceutical industry would go so hard against state campaigns when they have the opportunity to pass?
Well, a few things, but I personally have never said they would. Do I think, if it gets on the ballot, absolutely. Locally, your local Aetna's, Blue Cross, whatever, you're going to see commercials. This is just reality. As far as that goes, you guys also are connected to a super PAC to take on those fights that you say are not going to happen. So I'm kind of confused which it is.
So Whole Washington is not associated with any super
You're
PACs.
connected.
Okay, so can you describe it?
Connected as in the two people on your board of Whole Washington are on the board of a super PAC. So,
first of all, you're referring to the American Health Security Project. The American Health Security Project is not a super PAC. It is a website. It has some shared founders, but there is no association between Whole Washington and the American Health Security Project. We are not partners. We are not campaigning together. And you should have them on if you want to have that conversation. But
no,
Whole Washington.
Dr. Joe Jarvis said it's a super PAC, actually. And Sabby, when the last time they came on your show, they said they're trying to make it a super PAC, correct?
Yeah.
I
will add here. I will add here that some of them did go on to RBN. And CJ was interviewing them. I wasn't on for that episode, but that question did come up, and Dr. Joe Jarvis was on that panel, and he did say it is a super PAC. That's actually where that came from.
No, but to clarify, they are not formally incorporated, right? So the point I'm making is not that they are or are not a super PAC or will not be a super PAC. My point is that right now they are not an official group of anything. They don't have a bank account. They have a website. They have a Twitter account. They have some people. They are not. They're not formally incorporated as a 501c3 or C4 or super PAC. And so my point is that until they do something, we need to see what they will do, right? We need to see what kind of org they're going to be. But Whole Washington is not partnered with this org. And until there is a partnership between them, I don't see why I should be asked to answer why Whole Washington is involved with this super PAC when it's not a super PAC yet. It doesn't exist, and we're not associated.
Sabby, can you actually pull up the one meme type thing I made about the 401, 501c4?
Sure. Let me go to my screen here. Like that.
So something I have asked so many times, along with other people, that has never gotten a response ever, is why Whole Washington had their 501c4 reneged for not providing any donations for 3 years.
I'm not sure what you're looking at there, but what I'll say is we just added a financial transparency section to our website. So if you go to wholewashington.org, you can go and see our PDC listings, which includes our contributions and our expenditures, and you're welcome to look at them there.
Going back how far?
I don't know. I haven't looked at it recently.
Okay, because this goes back to 2018, I believe. It is a federal website. So the fact that it states that you guys had your nonprofit revoked because of not being monetarily transparent is very concerning. And I think that people who have donated deserve clarification.
Yeah, well, I will just say that if there's anything there that I need to know about, then we will work on it, and we will be sure to file whatever papers or disclosures need to be done. But Whole Washington is not a super PAC. We are not associated with the American Health Security Project, and you can see our expenditures on our PDC listings on the website.
I think the problem is the message that came across on that RBN panel was not what you're saying right now, Andre. And I don't know if I can't remember if you were on that panel or not, but the message that was delivered on that panel was that there was no other option, and that's why they were going in that direction. And I remember watching that episode because the chat was very much against that, and that's why CJ was trying to address that question. So I don't know, like I'm not there, I'm not involved. Maybe there's miscommunication, I don't know, but I just wanted to make you aware that that's where that's coming.
That's an opinion of the American Health Security Project, right? And they need to, if that's what they believe, then that's a case they need to make, and they need to see if that's the sort of thing that people will organize behind. And let me put it this way. If like in a year or two, we're talking about how they got us Medicare for all, I'll say that they were right. But the point is right now, that's something that they're figuring out in the case that they're making, but it's not whole Washington.
Okay, thank you for the super chat, Colin. I do want to address this really quick. Gay marriage was legal in certain states until it was legal federally. The LGBTQ community didn't stop push for federal, even when states legalized gay marriage. Both can happen at the same time. I totally hear you, Colin, but one thing I do want to add is that gay marriage was made legal by the Supreme Court. I think that's the added difference I want to just add in there.
And it doesn't cost money. That's always the underlying factor.
It saves money. It saves money is the reality of it, that we will all be wealthier for this legislation.
No. I don't mean it would cost us money if you guys passed. I'm saying like one of the selling points to people who don't even agree with gay marriage was the fact that it wouldn't cost anything. Because
sure,
that's how they're
but are you saying it should cost me money and it should cost my family money? Or are you saying it should cost the state money, right? Like one of us has to pay for this.
For gay marriage?
No, for healthcare.
I'm talking about gay marriage.
I know, but you're comparing. It was in comparison to healthcare, though.
I'm so confused. That makes no sense to me.
Thanks for this super chat, VA from NY. Pelosi told them to stop pushing for Medicare for all, but to only fight for state single payer. Thank you for that super chat as well. And thank you for this, Lauren. More Americans support Medicare for all now than ever. We have the support now. What is missing is our will to fight together. Staying divided and focusing on one state at a time is getting played. Thank you so much for the super chat.
Can you pull up my Pelosi? And you're going to have to read the quote because I can't see it.
And I also would knew this would come up, so I know what I'm going to say.
Pelosi. Okay, so this is a quote. So I say to people, if you want that, do it in your states. States are laboratories. It can work out. It is the least expensive, least administrative way to go about this, but the comfort level with a broader base of the American people is not there yet. It does not mean it could not be. States are a good place to start.
So the point that I always make with this quote when it comes up is that depending on who you're talking to in the legislature, you'll basically get two reasons why they don't want to support single payer. If you're talking to a state legislator, they will say, we think that is something the federal government should do. And if you're talking to a federal legislature, they will say, oh, leave that to the states, okay? Everyone wants to push around who's responsible for this, which is why a unified strategy that says, I don't care what legislature you sit in, as one of the governments that I am a member of, that represents me, that, as a government that I am represented by, I expect you to provide me to ensure that me and everyone else can have healthcare. That's what it means for it to be a right. So it's a right no matter what level of government we're talking about, which is why we need to push our state legislators to push for it at the state level, and our federal legislators to push for it federally. But we also need to push them to support it across that because a few reasons. One is that they are still incredibly influential. If you're a federal legislator, you have incredible influence over state, the way that state legislatures feel about it and the way that they consider these things. It shows the federal support. But then the other thing is that state legislators are future federal legislators. And part of the way we're going to get a legislature that will pass this federally is by starting them at the beginning of their careers and making sure that they are solid healthcare candidates, solid healthcare legislators, all the way up to when they become federal legislators or even a president, whatever it is. But we need to make sure that at every point of somebody's political career, that it's made very clear to them that it is expected that they will take responsibility for the healthcare of the people they represent.
So, as far as Pelosi, I just want to let people know why he said this quote, and she said a couple other ones. It was because after Bernard ran the first time in 2016, we saw thousands of Bernie-crats running. Thousands, all on his platform. It was freaking beautiful. And because of that, Pelosi was shitting her pants like, oh my God, these people really want this national plan. And she stated, this isn't an article of someone who was in the meeting, she stated, I'm going to push state by state to tell people that's a better way to do it, because she didn't want the focus and pressure to be on presidential candidates. It's true. Like, that is why she started saying things like that. So I guess I'm just kind of like, I don't know why people would support something Pelosi supports. It's kind of doing what she wants you to do, to be quite honest.
If Pelosi actually wanted this, she could have expended an ounce of effort on CalCare. And you might have also heard in my interview with Jordan, and I'd be interested to get more information on what he was talking about, but that she played more of an obstructing role on CalCare again. So just because a politician says something does not mean that that is actually what they want. And that's part of what the idea of Force the Vote was are these co-sponsors of Medicare for All actually going to come through and vote for it if we demand that of it, and if we exercise our political power to require them to do that? And that's why Ash Kalra wanted to pull CalCare instead of having it voted on in the floor, because he was protecting, I'm not on the ground in California. And by the way, that's another thing that I think is important here, is that the situation on the ground is something that I think should be left to organizers on the ground. So I have heard from the California Nurses Association that they think that Ash Kalra was protecting his colleagues from voting against CalCare because he knew that it would make them look bad and hurt them electorally. But out here in Washington, we have our own political situation that I think is best left to organizers in Washington. And, we do not just organize strictly, like, the ways that this connects to other issues is so important, right? So we have other ballot initiatives in Washington, like How's Our Neighbors, which is turning in their signatures today. It's for social housing. It has incredible momentum behind it. The communities around it are incredible. And we've collected hundreds of signatures out there while collecting signatures for whole Washington. And they've collected signatures for us. So this gives us the opportunity to build organization and become politically powerful in our communities, and then use that political power to get the policies that we want. And I think that that's how we're going to get there.
Okay. I'm looking at the time here. I do want to go ahead and try to wrap up, and I do want to finish with this question. So is it possible to do both? And I look at something like the Fight for 15, right? Like, that's something that we did want to happen nationally. Obviously, there were like 8 Democrats in Congress, or excuse me, in the Senate, actually, that voted against it. So that, the own party that was kind of like pushing for it, you had people in the Democratic Party basically say, no, we're not going to do that. So it's not just Kirsten Sinema, it's not just Joe Manchin. There were 8 of them that voted against the fight for 15. At the same time, over the past couple of years, there have been states in the United States that have already passed that. For example, my state, Massachusetts, we passed that years ago. So we're almost at that $15 mark. So the question that I have to both of you, and I want to end with this, is it possible to fight for both at the same time?
Andre?
You know my answer. It's absolutely. I know it's possible to fight for both at the same time. I do it. I have led marches of hundreds of people through Washington State for Medicare for All. I've met people all over the country. I've traveled to Maine and gathered signatures to get people in Maine to get healthcare on the ballot for them. I have created my own national org to build that 50-state coalition, Medicare for All everywhere. So absolutely 100%. When I was a Bernie delegate, I was part of that bloc that voted no on the platform because it didn't include Medicare for All. And I sit on the DSA Medicare for All steering committee because I believe in showing up for really wherever there is the call, wherever I feel that I can make a positive contribution to the healthcare justice movement. I like to show up and do that. And sometimes that's for Medicare for All, and sometimes it's for whole Washington. And it's always for both, actually. So that's the way I see it. And I invite everyone who wants to be involved in the campaign to go to wholewashington.org. Again, wholewashington.org/sign if you want to figure out how to sign, wholewashington.org/volunteer. If you want to get involved as a volunteer, you can donate. And, I say this all the time, but we really want to create a universal campaign for universal healthcare, which means that you don't have to be from Washington. You can come gather signatures with us anyway. If you are a non-citizen or something like that, you might not be able to vote for, say, your federal legislators, but you can still help get something on the ballot, and you can get a healthcare system on the ballot that's going to cover you. So it gives people that way to be involved where they're often not able to be involved. And I really think that anyone, no matter where you are, even if you're all the way on the other side of the globe, there is a way for you to get involved in the campaign. And I invite you to be a part of it. And I think that we all need to be a part of a global healthcare justice movement. And that is the way that I try to live every day.
Joy?
Can people do both? Yeah, I mean, I fight for national Medicare for all and housing and tons of mutual aid. And I mean, of course, we're not one issue people type thing. My concern is in transparency. My concern is in, explaining pros and cons of things. My concern is not misleading people. So I think as long as there is a clear line of this is how it would work this way, this is how it would work this way, this part is not Medicare for all, this part is Medicare for all, but that's what we're striving for, things like that, that I can understand more, put it that way. But I do just want to say, as a disabled person with, tons of medical debt, it makes me feel a lot better when I see people nationally fighting, because my disabled comrades, my broke comrades, my friend who uses me as a therapist because he has no insurance in Texas, this isn't helping them. So I genuinely want to know, why should I support what you're doing as a disabled woman in Pennsylvania who has friends, so many friends, and so many people in the disabled community hurting now? Why should we support Washington?
Do you want me to answer that, or?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, I mean, the same reason why I should support you getting healthcare in Pennsylvania or people getting healthcare on the ballot in Maine. It's because we're all in this together, and we all want each other as members of our community to have healthcare, right? Our national, local, global community. We want us all to have healthcare. So I hope that anyone who wants people across the country, whether they're in Washington or not, but I hope that we support opportunities people have to get healthcare, right? And we have an opportunity to get healthcare on the ballot for Washington State, and it absolutely will play if we can do it, and I know that we can, it will play a huge role in the federal movement for healthcare justice. I know it.
I do want to say, I really hope that if this fails in Washington again, that you guys do change paths and go full national, because we're seeing failures over and over in other states. We just saw New York a week ago. So I hope that
so will you invest 100% in state organizing if it fails federally?
I don't see it failing federally.
We don't have it. We don't have it.
That makes no sense. Yes, I'm going to do 50 states. I am that powerful. I am going to do all these states.
My point is that we have seen so many people fight for healthcare and fall short of Medicare for all. Okay, and we can't throw their work under the bus. We can't say, you know what, your campaign failed, so you shouldn't have tried. You shouldn't try again.
Never said that.
Bernie Sanders ran for president twice, and he's the reason we have a real healthcare movement right now. And we will succeed, but our success, the day it comes, will be built off of many, many attempts that came before it.
Okay. I mean, I guess we leave it at that. Sabby, can you show the picture of me and Rose so I can let people know what's going on? So Khanna, not a fan of politicians, but Khanna did reach out to M4ALL, invite us to come speak to him in DC. We went. I brought my medical bills from the past 2 years. And after he met with us over an hour, he reached out to Bernie, and they are now working on medical debt cancellation legislation because of our meeting. So, and we are going to be meeting with another congressional person later this month. So hold people accountable. That's all I'm going to say, because when you go there and you're not nice, this is what happens. So right. Anytime you feel defeated, just hold them accountable. Regardless, state, national, I don't give a shit. Hold them accountable. They work for us.
Right on.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Hold them accountable.
One thing I do just want to add really quick, because I don't want people to get confused. The New York Health Act, New York State is not a ballot initiative state, but they were trying to do it through the legislature. So I wish there would have been more. I wish there would have been more focus and more highlight on that. I felt like that wasn't really covered much. But yeah, they were probably pretty close to that happening. But we see how things go. I want to thank both of you so much for coming on. I like both of you guys. I think you're both like great activists out there. All of us were involved for the March for Medicare for All. So I applaud your efforts and everything that you do. And hopefully, we move forward through this and we can get everybody healthcare in this country.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for doing this, Andre. Thanks for Sabby for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Okay, guys, let's go ahead and get into tonight's stories. We're not done yet. No, we're not. All right, tonight, what are we discussing? Let me go ahead and share my thumbnail for you. I have some interesting conversations, so I will be streaming a little bit longer tonight. What is this thing doing? Stop. Sorry. Yes, so tonight, we're talking about, speaking of Khanna, Khanna and Nina Turner inflation. That is going to be an interesting story we're going to discuss. I'm also going to discuss Hillary Clinton lies. Surprise, surprise. Also, Colombia wins, a huge win in Colombia. I cannot go without talking about that story tonight. So, and things that I think that we should be paying close attention to right now is what is happening in the global South in reference to electing people that are progressives and people that are socialists. So we're going to get into that tonight as well. Shout out really quick for these super chats. I don't want to forget about you guys. AJF says, people, the beast, that's the state/corp upper class, are good as a class issue at fending off single push actions. Burnine burned twice. We need to prick them like 1,000 needles and push for federal and states. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for this super chat, Jay, the informant. Stackhouse is absolutely right. The state fight. And thank you for this super chat, AJF. There's a reason why people like Koch brothers focused on state legislatures and national elections. Thank you so much for that. Shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really appreciate your help. If you want to become a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabby, Sabsters, Sabinators, and Ultimate. All of their names are listed here. And I want to give a quick shout out to a new Sabby patron. Shout out to Cricket. Thank you. Thank you so much. And their names are scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So, Hillary Clinton, she's back. Yes, Hillary Clinton is back. She had an interview recently, and there are a couple of statements that she made during this interview that I found to be somewhat concerning that I do want to discuss with you. And I think you need to pay attention to this because it's going to show you what to be prepared for with the Democrats' strategy this midterm and for 2024. So Hillary Clinton had an interview. And in this interview, there are 2 things I want to address. The first one is this, and I read the entire interview myself, by the way. I read the entire thing just to make sure that people weren't just cherry picking things and mixing quotes up. But she actually did say this. So here we go. Hillary Clinton suggests that transgender debate should not be a priority for Dems. Now, people are going to see this and see Fox News and think they're exaggerating, but they are actually not. Again, I went to the original source and read it. So, former presidential candidate Hillary Clinton said Democrats should be focused on winning elections and suggested they should not treat the transgender debate as priority. Right here. Now, why is this a problem, ladies and gentlemen? Remember in 2009 when Barack Obama said that Roe v. Wade is not going to be a priority for the Democratic Party. 2017, Nancy Pelosi said that Roe v. Wade is not going to be a priority for the Democratic Party. And look at where we are now. Now we see the Supreme Court is wanting to overturn Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade was not codified into law. Hillary Clinton is letting you know that she doesn't think that the Democratic Party, the candidates, the people who are running, should make transgender debate a priority. It's kind of interesting, though, because that's not what she said before. Let me show you what she said before. Well, actually, let me read this part right here first. So her interview was with the Financial Times. It was published on Friday. She goes on to say, this needs to be larger. Okay, there we go. She goes on to say, Democrats seem to be going out of their way to lose elections by elevating activist causes, notably the transgender debate, which are relevant only to a small minority. What sense does it make to depict J.K. Rowling as a fascist? She goes on to say, we are standing on the precipice of losing our democracy. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. And everything that everybody else cares about and then goes out the window. Look, the most important thing is to win the next election. The alternative is so frightening that whatever does not help you win should not be a priority. Now, there's something I want to highlight here because this is Hillary Clinton saying the quiet part out loud. The first portion here, we are standing on the precipice of losing our democracy. That's really interesting coming from someone who paid off the DNC to try to help her win. She's going to come back and talk about losing our democracy. And have you noticed they all seem to have these talking points lately? AOC is saying it. Nancy Pelosi is saying it. Joe Biden is saying it. All of them are on board with using the same phrase. We have to fight for our democracy. We might lose our democracy, but they've been buying off elections and handpicking politicians for decades. That's why I argue that we never really had a true democracy. But someone who paid off the DNC was giving them money to help her win, who cheated. She's going to complain about losing democracy. Let's look at this portion right here. Let me go up one right here. Democrats are going out of their way to lose elections by elevating activist causes. The same activist causes that Hillary Clinton fought for back when she was in college. A lot of people don't know about that. Hillary Clinton used to be an activist, especially for women's rights. Now, older Hillary that got paid and has everything, she don't want you to know. No. We do not need to fight for any activist causes. That's Hillary Clinton right now. See how people change once they get into politics? I want to show you something that she said about transgender remark. I want to show you something that she said when she was running for election that contradicts what she's saying right now. But this part right here, the most important thing is to win the next election. The alternative is so frightening that whatever does not help you win should not be a priority. And that right there should let you know that they are going to focus on issues that they believe are going to help them win. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to fight for those issues. And this is a game that politicians have been doing for decades. Let me pick issues that I know will help me win, and then I win and I get into office and I'm not really going to fight for them. That's what this is really about. So she's saying the quiet part out loud. Focus on the issues that will help you win. That's why I say, and I still stand by this, for people who are saying that they support Medicare for all, that they support canceling student loan debt, support is not enough. That's not enough anymore. The question I want to hear people asking in those interviews, and this includes mainstream media, by the way, I want to hear them ask them, are you going to fight for it? Because anyone can say that they support it. Now, Hillary Clinton didn't want to fight for activist causes. She doesn't think that the Democratic Party should focus on transgender rights. But that wasn't how Hillary Clinton felt when she was running for office. I want to remind you of a speech that was given at one of her town hall meetings. Listen to this.
Oh, yeah, this young man, I think, has had his hand up for a long time, and he's got a cheering section behind him. He's brought his own cheerleaders who are...
Thank you.
Yes, go right ahead.
As a bisexual member of the LGBT community, equal rights has been a very important thing to me. You said that over the years, your views on this topic have evolved. How do you compare yourself to other candidates that have remained firm on their views, and how do you think you've done to change from your past views?
Well, I think that if you speak with the Human Rights Campaign or any of the large advocacy groups, they will tell you that they count on me and that.
Did you hear that? Human Rights campaigns, and advocacy groups. They count on me. Again, this is when she was running for office.
You can count on me. I was, I think, the first and only first lady ever to march in a gay pride parade back in the late 1990s. So I had...
Told you. What did I tell you? What did I tell you? I was one of the first to march in the gay pride parades. Now she's saying something different. Now she don't want you to focus on that. You see what I mean?
Have been an advocate, a vocal, visible advocate for equality and against discrimination. Yes, my views did evolve, and I think most people my age would say the same thing. There might be some exceptions, but largely because of my strong opposition to discrimination of any sort and my personal relationships with a lot of people over the years, I certainly concluded that marriage equality should be the law of the land, and I was thrilled when the Supreme Court made it the law of the land, and I will enforce marriage equality, but we've got to go further than that. You know, in a lot of states now, because of the constitutional decision, you can get married on Saturday and get fired on Monday, because we still permit discrimination in employment and in public accommodations. So we have to pass the Equality Act, which is currently pending in Congress. That will...
Oh boy, it was all a priority back then when she was running for office.
Will be my highest priority, so that marriage isn't the end of the debate. It's a step along the path to true equality, and you will be able to count on me to fight for you.
You will be able to count on me to fight for you. Oh, she's singing a different tune today. That's because there's no campaign. This particular part right here, right about here. Listen to this.
I was, I think, the first and only first lady ever to march in a gay pride parade back in the late 1990s. So I have been an advocate, a vocal, visible advocate for equality and against discrimination. Yes, my views did evolve, and I think most people my age would say the same thing. There might be some exceptions, but largely because of my strong opposition to discrimination of any sort and my personal relationships with a lot of people over the years, I certainly concluded that marriage equality should be the law of the land, and I was thrilled when the Supreme Court made it the law of the land. And
she goes on to say her strong opposition towards discrimination. Where's that strong opposition now? She doesn't want the Democratic Party to focus on activist causes. Did you guys hear this? They're all a part of the elite class. I don't hear poor people saying that. This just goes to show you it doesn't really matter if they're Democrat or Republican, because at the end of the day, Hillary Clinton's letting you know they're going to focus on the issues that are going to help them win. That doesn't mean they're actually going to do it. They're not going to focus on issues that only concern a small minority, which she mentioned in that interview.
Well, I will enforce marriage equality, but we've got to go further than that. You know, in a lot of states now, because of the constitutional decision, you can get married on Saturday and get fired on Monday.
Did you hear she said we have to go further than that? See, that's the part. Here we go.
We've got to go further than that.
Now, this town hall, 2015, we have to go further than that. And now, in that recent interview, she's telling you, nah, shouldn't be a priority. Don't focus on that, candidates, if you want to win in the midterms. Only focus on the issues that are going to help you win. Thank you for that interview that you did with Financial Times, Hillary Clinton, because that just let everybody know that you're not really going to fight for the people. Here's another segment here. Deadline reported it as well. Let me scooch over. Hillary Clinton to Democrats, don't focus on unpopular issues. It's terrible. Hillary Clinton is adamant she's not running for president again, but that's not stopping her from worrying about her fellow Democrats and their choice of hills to die on. Make this larger. Boop-a-boop. In an extensive interview with Financial Times, the former presidential candidate said Democrats should be careful on their platforms. They got to be careful, ladies and gentlemen. This coming from the woman who lost. This coming from the woman who chose Tim Kaine as her running mate. The anti-abortion politician. She's the one that's giving advice to Democrat candidates. The person who lost. And what's sad is that they'll actually listen to her because of who she is. Here we go. This was another issue that she brought up. Of course, you knew she was going to bring this up. Defunding the police is one such issue. The alternative is so frightening that whatever does not help you win should not be a priority. Defunding the police is one such issue. You need accountable measures, but you also need policing. It doesn't even pass the common sense politics test to not believe that. Some positions are so extreme on both right and left that they retreat to their corners. Politics should be the art of addition, not subtraction. So here we go here, which is another example of these corporate Democrats telling you not to be extreme. They want you to be moderate. Even something like universal health care or Medicare for all, they consider that to be extreme. So I want to be very clear about that. That is not just a Republican opinion. Corporate Democrats have that same ideology. They believe as well that that is an extreme ask. It's a problem. I would really like for journalists to stop interviewing Hillary Clinton. Stop interviewing her. Stop interviewing Barack Obama about what these politicians should do or use as their strategy in order to win. They are corporate Democrats. Hillary Clinton lost. She did not win. Barack Obama was chosen. He was selected. And the times that we are living in right now are much more dire than they were back then. Just stop interviewing them. I'm going to go to some of the comments and then I'm going to go to the next story. Brad said Hillary does not know how to win. Exactly. Sebastian, Clinton was against same-sex marriage until it was politically in their favor. There you go. Hector says if only Hillary Clinton had someone like Hillary Clinton to advise her on her failed presidential campaign. Absolutely. Luis says, but a $800 billion military budget is not an extreme ask. Exactly. The only time they believe that policies are extreme is when it benefits the people. They can give billions and billions of dollars to the military industrial complex because that's not benefiting people. That's benefiting an industry. That's the difference. I'm going to grab those comments on Rockfin Eric. Thank you for the tips on Rockfin, Roger. Secretary Becerra of Health and Human Services has a history for being in support of states who wish to pursue their own healthcare plan and hinted, I don't know what that is. And hinted towards granting federal waivers to those that do it. I say put it before him and see if he backs his rhetoric up. From there, we can reassemble and figure out what to do next. In New York State, the New York Health Act, we have already figured out a way to pay for it. Yes, we took over 100 years before states started doing it, but that's 18 more than when Teddy Roosevelt was the first to propose a national healthcare system, yet we still do not have it. Regarding on states, depending on taxing the rich, that's why we need public banks to create the surplus to provide the money needed to finance these programs. Seeing with public banks, you don't need to raise or create new taxes to do so. Joy, you can't tell people to prioritize what you wish for them to prioritize. You must leave it up to the people to decide themselves. If they wish to prioritize doing it at state level, then I'm sorry, but you have to accept that. People always making decisions that we don't like, but they choose what they feel is best for them. Saying they're selfish because they're not prioritizing national doesn't gain allies. My point is that, like you said, people need healthcare today. If they see and had the federal government convince them, like myself, that they are not going to get it from them, then they will turn elsewhere. Under extreme circumstances, people will do what they got to do. The government closest to you is the one more responsive to you. You will get more out of state lawmakers than federal lawmakers. If Becerra backs down and doesn't grant federal waivers, then the laws will be on the books, lying dormant until we get a HHS secretary who does grant waivers, and then it can go into effect immediately. Just like there have been anti-abortion laws on the books since the 1970s, lying dormant, ready to go into effect as soon as they can get a SCOTUS that strikes down Roe v. Wade. Also, Sabby, don't kill me, call Angela. Oh, yes, thank you for the reminder. Thank you for that, Roger Meadows. All right, let's go ahead into our next story. So shout out to Case Study QB for these clips. So it appears Nina Turner appeared on CNN and they were asking her several questions, but the one I want to focus on is about inflation. And Ro Khanna also made an appearance recently, and he was also questioned about inflation. Two different shows that they appeared on, but they seem to be on the same page when it comes to what needs to happen for the American people and inflation in this country. So again, shout out to Case Study QB for this. I'm actually going to skip past this part because they start to ask her about January 6th first. I'm not trying to deal with that right now. Okay, here we go. So I want you to listen to what she says when they ask her about inflation right now.
Anybody else in his cabinet or around him that had any knowledge of this should be held accountable.
And Nina, the president, Joe Biden, did an interview last week with the AP, and on the question of a recession, here's what he said. First of all, it's not inevitable. Secondly, we're in a stronger position than any nation in the world to overcome this inflation. You live in the real world in the Midwest.
I mean, we may be in a stronger position than any other country in the world, but the people in this nation right now are hurting. The confluence of the pandemic, the confluence of this inflation, and quite frankly, the cavalier attitude that many in the elites have about the suffering of everyday people in hoods all around this country, whether they're rural hoods, urban hoods, or suburban hoods. This is real. I mean, look, the gas prices in California, for example, are higher than the federal minimum wage. In my state of Ohio, gas prices are over $5 a gallon and don't need premium, because if you need premium, even in Ohio, you're paying almost $6. There are things that can be done. You know, I was talking to stratification economist, Dr. Derek Hamilton, who was saying that we understand that inflation at some points will happen. But what will we do as a nation to drive down the level of pain that people are feeling in this country when they can't afford their food, they can't afford gas? You got to go to work, but you can't afford the gas. There are things that can be done. The Fed can actually be a lender too. The Fed can jump in here. They can do more than just increase rates. They can actually jump in here and do something. So more has to be done.
And she's doing, actually, I agree with everything you just said. My daughter is expecting the whole baby formula thing. They knew or should have known. It's the whole supply chain issue. The Fed raising interest rates, inflation. Stop spending. Thank God for Joe Manchin. Because, but not for him, we would have been in a worse
Senator,
situation.
We're not going to thank God for
Yeah,
Joe
we are.
Manchin.
Because
This is not about
listen.
spending.
When I was there, respectfully, when I was there, it was $9 trillion national debt. We're at $30 trillion. You can't keep spending and spending and spending and expect
We
inflation
have 20 seconds left. Audio on.
Okay, so that's Scott Brown. I don't know if you guys remember him. He's a former Republican senator. He ran against Elizabeth Warren and he lost. So that was actually when Elizabeth Warren won her first time for U.S. Senate. Just FYI here in Massachusetts. He looks different now. It looks like he's dyed his hair a little bit. So I almost didn't recognize him at first. But I want you to pay attention to something that was said right about here.
Stronger position than any nation in the world to overcome this inflation.
So if we're the strongest nation in the world to overcome this inflation, why hasn't anything been done about it? What's the plan? Because I'm seeing a lot of people interviewed, politicians, candidates about this issue. Joe Biden's had press conferences about inflation right now as well, but I don't hear a plan. What are they going to do to drive those prices down? If we're the strongest nation in the world that can overcome this, then why aren't we overcoming it? I'm going to show you why in just a second. But listen to this as well.
You live in the real world in the Midwest.
I mean, we may be in a stronger position than any other country in the world, but the people in this nation right now are hurting. The confluence of the pandemic, the confluence of this inflation, and quite frankly, the cavalier attitude that many in the elites have about the suffering of everyday people in hoods all around this country, whether they're rural hoods, urban hoods, or suburban hoods. This is.
And I want to preface here, like when she mentions elites, I just want to remind everyone that means elites on the Democrat side and the Republican side, not just elites that are Republicans, all of them.
Real. I mean, look, the gas prices in California, for example, are higher than the federal minimum wage.
So I've had people send me pictures of themselves at the tank. I have friends that live in California, $8 a gallon, $9 a gallon. It's ridiculous. So if you're making, granted, California did increase their minimum wage, but regardless, if you're making $7.25 an hour and your gas, let's just say your gas is $5 a gallon, you're not really making anything. You're making just enough to put gas into your car, and depending on how far you have to drive to get to work, you're making enough to put gas in your car to get you to work and get you back home. If you talk to some of my friends that live in Maryland or live in Virginia, that DC area, but they work in Washington, DC, where they have to sit through traffic multiple times throughout the day, an hour, 2-hour commutes, how are those people dealing right now with the high increase with gas? That's just something I want you to think about.
My state of Ohio, gas prices are over $5 a gallon and don't need premium, because if you need premium, even in Ohio, you're paying almost $6. There are things that can be done. You know, I was talking to stratification economist, Dr. Derek Hamilton, who was saying that we understand that inflation at some points will happen. But what will we do as a nation to drive down the level of pain that people are feeling in this country when they can't afford their food, they can't afford gas? You got to go to work, but you can't afford the gas. There are things that can be.
You got to go to work, but you can't afford the gas. And I just had a private conversation with a friend of mine about this recently, who told me they don't know how they're going to get to work next week because they just can't afford the gas. Isn't that something? You know, it's a really screwy system when you are basically working just to put gas in your car to get to work. That's a really messed up system. But this is all a part of capitalism. It is a winner take all world that we live in. We don't have guardrails on capitalism. And I know some people want guardrails on capitalism, but how's that working out? We don't have it. These companies can charge whatever they want. Why aren't the gas prices? Why are they driving these gas prices down? And don't come back to me and say, oh, it's because of Putin. No, it's not because of Putin. It's because of greed. It's because of corruption. And I'm going to show you after I finish this clip and the one with Khanna, I'm going to show you the problem between the relationship of some of these gas companies and the politicians that we have in office.
The Fed can actually be a lender too. The Fed can jump in here. They can do more than just increase rates. They can actually jump in here and do something. So more has to be done.
Okay, so I want to give credit where credit's due. I'm glad that Nina brought up what the federal government, what the feds can do, because that's important for people to hear. What I would also like to hear in this discussion, and maybe they don't know about it, maybe some of them do and don't want to talk about it, I would like to hear them talk about MMT. I would like to hear them talk about minting a coin, how that's something that the United States government can do to wipe all of this out. In order to hear that message, I got to go to people's YouTube channels. Why are they not bringing on these macroeconomists that are very well versed in that information? Why are they not bringing on people like that? Like Fadul Kaboub, who came onto my show. Why are they not bringing him on CNN to talk about the economy? He's an academic elite. They like to talk to people who are academic elite. Why not bring him on to talk about MMT? They don't want you to know about it. Something to think about.
She's doing, actually, I agree with everything you just said. My daughter is expecting the whole baby formula thing. They knew or should have known. It's the whole supply chain issue. The Fed raising interest rates, inflation. Stop spending. Thank God for Joe Manchin.
He's totally wrong here. Thank God for Joe Manchin. But this is Scott Brown. You see why he lost? You see why he lost to Elizabeth Warren? This was his mindset.
Because, but not for him, we would have been in a worse
Senator,
situation.
We're not going to thank God for
Yeah, we are. Because
this is not about
listen. When I was there,
respectfully,
when I was there, it was $9 trillion national debt. We're at $30 trillion. You can't keep spending and spending and spending and expecting.
We have 20 seconds left. Audio, I want to get.
Yeah, he's terrible. I'm sorry. Like, with all well said, he's, I guess, what you would call a moderate Republican. Like, when someone's a Republican and they're in office in Massachusetts, they're typically like this moderate Republican. For example, a lot of people may not be aware of this, but the governor of Massachusetts is Republican, but he is a moderate Republican. So there's a little bit of a difference than what you're going to see with people that are coming from red states. It's a little bit different, but still, he lost for a reason. He lost for a reason. He doesn't really speak to the needs of the people. And one of the things that Elizabeth Warren was really good at when she ran against him the first time is she focused on the economic needs of the people. And she heavily targeted student loan debt. That was one of the things that put her over in that race. Now Scott Brown has gone on and he's become an ambassador, but he still hasn't learned, apparently. Now, Khanna also had an interview where he was asked about inflation as well. And I want you to hear his comment about this. Again, it's different from what Joe Biden is saying. I think at this point, you really can't just continue to have Joe Biden's talking points, because your constituents are feeling the pain at the pump and they're feeling the pain in the grocery store. So listen to this.
Democratic member of the House Armed Services, Agriculture, and Oversight Committees, and a good friend to us. So welcome back to the broadcast. Let's talk about the oil companies who are pushing back after President Biden sent that letter to the CEOs demanding that they boost gas supplies to try to combat the rising prices. ExxonMobil and Chevron said the administration could be doing more to address oil prices. This, as the president invokes weighing some emergency powers. Can either party do anything about this?
Well, the oil companies are just factually false. President Biden is right that they have many leases. The problem is that they're making record profits and they're sending that to Wall Street. They're not investing in increasing supply. They're sending those profits to Wall Street. They're profiting in enormous ways at the expense of the American consumer. And that's why many of us are calling for a windfall profits tax so that they are taxed on those extraordinary profits and we can put money back in the pockets of consumers.
Are they trying to justify that position that you explained there because they can say, oh, gosh, during the COVID pandemic, we lost money?
Well, the reason that they lost money has nothing to do with what they're doing now, which is making obscene amount of profits on Putin's war. And if they come clean and they say, yeah, we're making a record amount of profits, that would be one thing. But look, I admire the president. He's following President Kennedy. In 1962, President Kennedy took on the steel industry.
I want you guys to pay attention to these companies listed here because I'm going to show you something in a minute. I actually focused on BP and ExxonMobil. So pay attention to these gas companies here.
And those prices came down. And I'm glad that the president is now out there saying it's wrong for oil executives to be profiting on Putin's war while other Americans are paying at the pump.
Can I ask how much a gallon of gas is where you are in California and what your constituents are saying about that? I mean, who are they blaming? Are they blaming big oil or are they blaming the administration?
Here it comes.
Well, it's over $6. The price is high in the Bay Area. And every time I fly back to Washington and then go back home, it goes up a little higher. Hopefully, as your reporting suggested, maybe we've reached the peak. But they're upset. They're upset that the oil companies, frankly, they're upset at everyone in government. I mean, drivers are facing a hard time and they're hurting. So they're upset at a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go through this here. There's something I want to show you.
Member of the House Armed Services, Agriculture, and Oversight Committees, and a good friend to us. So welcome back to the broadcast. Let's talk about the oil companies who are pushing back after President Biden sent that letter to the CEOs demanding that they boost gas supplies to try to combat the rising prices.
I want you to pay attention to something that she just said. Let's talk about those oil companies that are pushing back after Biden sent that letter to those companies, to the CEOs of the companies. I want you to pay attention to that because that goes to show you something I've been saying for quite a long time. The corporations control the government. They are pushing back on the president of the United States because they have more power than he does. I'm going to show you why they have more power in a second. So pay close attention to what she just said. A lot of times on these segments, these commentators, they speak so quickly. Sometimes it can be hard to catch things. I like to watch clips multiple times. I noticed this the first time that she said that. They're pushing back on him. And this is why I say that us, the people, the American people, we need to push back too. See how they can do that? There's more of us than there are of them.
ExxonMobil and Chevron said the administration could be doing more to address oil prices. This, as the president invokes weighing some emergency powers. Can either party do anything about this?
Notice she said, can either party do anything about it? See, this is not a partisan issue. And you'll hear people make it a partisan issue. Some people are saying it's the Democrats' fault. Some people are saying it's the Republicans' fault. This isn't a partisan issue. This is an economic issue. And I want to remind you that both parties are owned by corporations. They're both owned by Wall Street.
Well, the oil companies are just factually false. President Biden is right that they have many leases. The problem is that they're making record profits and they're sending that to Wall Street. They're not investing in increasing supply. They're sending those profits to Wall Street. They're profiting in enormous ways at the expense of the American consumer. And that's why many of us are calling for a windfall profits tax so that they are taxed on those extraordinary profits and we can put money back in the pockets of consumers.
They're sending those profits to Wall Street. See, again, it's all tied back to that. It's all tied back to that. Wall Street controls all of it. They control everything. This is why, Ro Khanna's going on to talk shows and he's talking about this. He's going on to news programs and talking about this. Joe Biden did a press conference about it. But I'm not seeing a lot of these politicians going on to news shows talking about this issue. Ro Khanna seems to be the only one that's willing to take these questions. And I think you should ask yourself why, if your state representative is not answering these questions, you're not seeing them on any programs, they're not answering to you, their constituents. I think that you should call them, their office's public number. You need to call their office and you need to ask them, what are they doing in DC to fight and push back against this? They're your state representatives. They're your senators. You put them in office. You have every right to push them and ask them these questions the same way these commentators and these journalists can ask these questions as well.
Are they trying to justify that position that you explained there because they can say, oh, gosh, during the COVID pandemic, we lost money?
She just said during the pandemic, they lost money. Now, Ro Khanna follows with this, and I want to point out something in a second.
Well, the reason that they lost money has nothing to do with what they're doing now, which is making obscene amount of profits on Putin's war. And if they come clean and they say, yeah, we're making a record amount of profits, that would be one thing. But look, I admire the president.
But the reason why a lot of those companies lost money during the pandemic, well, pandemic's still here, but during the pandemic is because you got to think about all the states that shut down. Like my state, for example, Massachusetts, we were shut down. So I wasn't buying gas because I wasn't going anywhere. That part's left out. She doesn't mention it, and Ro Khanna doesn't mention it. All of the states, all the cities that shut down where people we weren't buying gas because we weren't going anywhere. They don't want to mention that, though.
He's following President Kennedy. In 1962, President Kennedy took on the steel industry, and those prices came down. And I'm glad that the president is now out there saying it's wrong for oil executives to be profiting on Putin's war while other.
But I think President Kennedy had a lot more guts than Joe Biden did. There wasn't as much money in politics back then either. And that's really what this is about.
Americans are paying at the pump.
Can I ask how much a gallon of gas is where you are in California and what your constituents are saying about that? I mean, who are they blaming? Are they blaming big oil or are they blaming the administration?
Well, it's over $6. The price is high in the Bay Area. And every time I fly back to Washington and then go back home, it goes up a little higher. Hopefully, as your reporting suggested, maybe we've reached the peak. But they're upset. They're upset that the oil companies, frankly, they're upset at everyone in government.
Thank you for mentioning that, Ashura. I've been noticing that as well. They keep calling it Putin's war. I've noticed that.
And I mean, drivers are facing a hard time. And
okay, let's look at these states with average gas prices above $5. So the highest that you can see on here is California. And again, like I said, I talked to my friends that live in the LA area and they were telling me they're paying like $8. So, but again, this is the average. Hawaii, $5.61. I'm over here in Massachusetts so again, for me, I paid more than that, but that's supposed to be the average. Again, I mean, it's very upsetting. And so a lot of people just aren't driving. Like I'm driving as little as possible and I'm trying not to go far. So let's put it that way. But this is a problem. So why is this happening? Why hasn't anything been done? I got to tell you to follow the money. There were two companies on there that I did research a little bit, ExxonMobil and BP. And I want you to see who they're funding. ExxonMobil. Again, this is via open secrets. This is public information. So ExxonMobil's recipients. So let's take a look at this. This is for 2022. If you want to, you can change the year. But for this segment, let's focus on 2022. Party of recipients, as you can see, they're giving to Republicans and they're giving to Democrats, more to Republicans, but they're giving to both parties. As we go down here, incumbents versus non-incumbents. If you noticed, most of ExxonMobil's money is going to politicians that are incumbents, politicians that are already in office. They are donating to some non-incumbents, but not as much. 5.98% to non-incumbents, 94% to incumbents. So what does that tell you? This is important for people to see. It's very clear what's going on here. So you have politicians here, some of them probably been in office for a long time, that are counting on that money from ExxonMobil, and ExxonMobil is counting on them. Now, House recipients, as you can see, 47 Democrats, 115 Republicans. Oh, what do you know? 0 independents. They're not donating to independent candidates. I wonder why. And this is the argument I make a lot of times when people say that third-party candidates or independent candidates are not viable, and that's not something we should do. By the way, when you get that talking point, the reason why that's made is because it requires more labor to produce a third-party candidate or independent candidate. It doesn't require as much labor for someone who goes through the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. So the question that you should come back and ask them is, well, why don't you want to do the work? Because that's really what that's about. But you can see how many people they're donating to in each party. Now, in the Senate, same thing, 15 Democrats, 35 Republicans, 1 independent. And this is something I want to point to your attention. Who do you think that 1 independent is? There's one independent. Who do you think it is? We'll come back to that. And then there's all federal candidates. Now, what I want you to see are the individual receipts here. They are donating, ExxonMobil is donating over $150,000 to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. The most money being received from ExxonMobil is through the Democratic Party. And that's the party in charge right now. Just something I want you to know. They are donating over $53,000 to the National Republican Senatorial Committee. But again, the majority is going to the Democratic Party. Over $32,000 to the National Republican Congressional Committee. Over $31,000 to the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. And here are the people that they're donating to. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll mention some. Kevin McCarthy, who you may remember, he was the one that everyone was saying, or some people who were against the vote saying he would become speaker. Kevin McCarthy, Tim Scott, I'm not surprised by that one at all. Steny Hoyer, that's a Democrat. Tom Malinowski, that's a Democrat. Again, Republican National Committee. Chuck Grassley, pointing out some of the ones that I think you may recognize. DNC Services Corporation, they're donating to them. Marco Rubio, Kirsten Gillibrand, which was really interesting. It was interesting to see her name on here, but they were donating to her as well. And the list goes on and on, you guys. You can go through all of them. We're not going to do that whole list for tonight. But that is for ExxonMobil. But there's more. Who is BP donating to? So this is BP North America PAC contributions to federal candidates. This is for 2020. Let's go to 2022. I want to be consistent. Okay, so let's look at this. Or it might not show up for this one yet. Oh, yeah, that's right. It's not going to show for 2022, but it does show for 2020. So They gave a total of $90,000 to Democrats and over $146,000 to Republicans. So again, like I said, they donate to both parties. Let's look at this here. 2019-2020 House candidates, they donated $74,000 to Democrats, $64,000 to Republicans. And surprise, surprise, Jim Clyburn, $10,000 to him. Lizzie Fetcher, Bob Latta. Again, I'm not going to go through all of them. There's Kevin McCarthy again, so you can see that he was taking money from two different oil companies here. The list goes on. I think there was someone else I wanted to point out on this page. There's Josh Gottenheimer. He's the Democrat from New Jersey. And this was the other one I wanted to point out. Henry Cuellar. I guess that shouldn't be a surprise either. But the point that I wanted to drive home is that this is the problem. You know, it's nice for Joe Biden to write a letter. It's nice for him to make a call. But the reason why the CEOs of those companies are able to push back on him in that way is because they're donating to politicians in DC. You have a lot of these politicians taking money, and that was just ExxonMobil and BP. I didn't go through all of them, but you have a lot of these politicians they're funded by the same oil companies that are increasing these prices. So they can complain about it in interviews. They can say they don't agree with it. But like I said, what's the plan? What are you going to do to drive these gas prices down? As you see, these companies, they pushed back on the president. This is why you need to get money out of politics. This is a big problem. I'm going to go to some of the comments in the chat. Ashura said gas is here $2.14 roughly. $2.15 can liter. Where in the world do you live? I haven't seen gas that cheap in a long time, Ashura. Thank you for the super chat. Sulamoon said Biden could implement a price freeze at any time he doesn't want to. Is Biden trying to get paid? Thank you for the super chat, Call Me John. They don't want MMT known because the goal is privatization. And understanding it clarifies we can have robust public spending and debt means nothing. Thank you for this as well. Thanks for mentioning MMT, Sabby. Love the show. Thank you, Call Me John. Thank you. He said per liter, I think it's about $8 a gallon. Oh, okay. Oh, Ashura, you're talking about liter? Come on, Ashura. Speak in gallon terms. Danny said, Sabs pulling out receipts. Always. Hugo, who's a Sabby member, I like the receipts. LOL. Thank you so much, Hugo. And I'll take those comments on Rockfin before we go to the next story. All right. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger Meadows. I don't think I said that one before. Okay, yeah. MA Senator Clown Brown talking about national debt. But can someone please mention to these chuckleheads that Americans could care less about the national debt? They want to know, what are you going to do about their personal debt that incurred when we had to take out credit cards and loans because our wages are below cost of living? We elect these chuckleheads because voters don't vote on policy. They vote on how the politician makes them feel. He identifies with me. He feels my pain. Ballot initiatives force voters to vote on policy, which is why they are so great. A warning to those who think that going to electric charging stations will solve high prices at the pump. Understand, if they are not municipalized, stationalized, or nationalized, then who you think will own them? My guess, private equity. meaning they'll have us right back here. Unless the charging stations are run as a consumer or retail cooperative, their biggest strength is that they are not looking to become millionaires as long as paycheck above cost of living. Call Angela. Okay, I will call her tomorrow, Roger, I promise. All right. So that's a big part of the problem. And I would like to hear people bring that up more in these discussions. What are you going to do? What are the steps? What is the plan? Is there a list? Items of action. Let me know. What is the plan? What are you going to do? So this next story is a huge one. And I do want to end with some good news here. There was a huge win in Colombia yesterday. Now, I want you guys to start paying attention more to what's happening with the Global South. Josana, my comrade at RBN, she talks about this a lot. We really need to pay attention to what people are doing there and the leaders that they are electing. They're electing true progressives, real leftists, and I mean real. Like when I say we don't have a left in this country, that doesn't mean that we don't have individuals here who are leftists. I mean, we don't have a left, and we don't. If you look at what's happening in these countries in South America, they have a true left movement, and they are electing people that we could never get elected here because we just don't have a true left. So yesterday in Colombia, a historic win. Gustavo Petro and Francia Marquez won yesterday. I want to play their acceptance speech, and then I want to go into some details about the issues that they ran on and how people are feeling about this today. So let's get into it.
Soy la primera mujer afrodescendiente de Colombia. Soy su vicepresidenta. Y quiero presentarles a su presidente, Gustavo Petro. Soy la
So I just want to show you really quick here. So this woman here, that is Francia Marquez, and this is Gustavo. And so they won yesterday in Colombia. Now, why is this so huge for Colombia? Let's go ahead and get into that. I'm going to share this article here. All right. I love it. I love it. I love it. Left-wing candidate and former guerrilla Gustavo Petro wins Colombian presidential race. Let's go there. Let's do the damn thing. And that's him there. Gustavo Petro will become Colombia's first leftist leader after winning the country's presidential race on Sunday. The former guerrilla won by a slim margin with over 50% of the votes against 77-year-old entrepreneur Rodolfo Hernandez. In this historic win, his running mate, Francia Marquez, will now become the first Afro-Colombian to hold executive powers. During his victory speech on Sunday night, Petro said he is open to dialogue with Hernandez. He has also called for a great national agreement to end violence in the country. What is coming here is real change. Real change. That is what we are committing our lives to. We will not betray the electorate that has demanded that Colombia change from today. Let's celebrate the first popular victory. May so many sufferings be cushioned in the joy that today floods the heart of the homeland. That's coming from Petro. Outgoing Colombian President Ivan Duque said he called Petro to congratulate him on his victory and that they had agreed to meet in the coming days to initiate a harmonious, institutional, and transparent transition. And there he is again there. Shortly after Petro claimed victory, rival Hernandez gave a speech saying he accepted the result. I accept the result as it should be if we want our institutions to be strong. Well, that didn't happen here in the United States now, did it? That did not happen here. I sincerely hope that this decision that has been taken is beneficial for all and that Colombia is heading towards the change that prevailed in the vote in the first round. Hernandez also said he hopes Petro knows how to lead the country and that Petro is faithful to his speech against corruption and that he does not disappoint those who trust him. Listen to this. Both candidates had run on promises of change, seeking to take advantage of how many Colombians are fed up with Duque, a leader whose tenure has been defined by his administration's handling of police conduct, inequality, and clashes between organized criminal groups. I want to highlight this right here in reference to Duque. Notice why the people voted the way that they did. Duque, a leader whose tenure has been defined by his administration's handling of police conduct, inequality, and clashes between organized criminal groups. And after everything that's happened here in this country, when we think about police conduct, when we think about inequality, 2024 will be the great time to have someone run that is not running through the duopoly, someone that speaks to all the people, someone that is coming from a background where they know what it's like to deal with inequality. They're coming from the working class, or they're coming from poverty. Wouldn't it be great if we had someone to do that here? Why can't that happen in the United States? Because the difference is here, we have people that are so bought into the game where even some of the independents like Bernie Sanders is going to tell you that he will not primary challenge Joe Biden. Look at what is happening in countries like Colombia, where they had to challenge the power because the power in office was so corrupt. And it was not helping the people. There was inequality. There was police conduct issues, the same issues that we have right here in the United States. But the problem that we have is that none of the politicians that are in DC right now have the guts to challenge Joe Biden on the primary level. Not one Democrat, not one independent who is already still there. When you have someone like Bernie Sanders, who, yes, he is an independent, but at the same time, he continues to always caucus with the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders is not going to take that role either. Even he, who said he had this revolution in this movement, even he is not willing to challenge the powers that be because he is just as much controlled opposition, even though he is not a part of that party. He knows how far the Democratic Party wants him to go. That is the difference between what's happening in the global South politically and what is happening in the United States politically. There, the people have nothing to lose. They're not afraid to stand up. They're not afraid to go out, hundreds of thousands of them in the streets. Talk to Josana. She will tell you how they fought back in Brazil. They're not afraid to challenge the power because so much has been stripped from the people that at the end of the day, they have nothing to lose. So they fight as a unit. That doesn't happen here because everyone is out for their self. Most of the politicians have been bought and paid for, even the ones that claim to be progressive, so to speak. They cower to Democrat establishment. They do not fight back against them. They talk a good talk, but when it's time to stand up and fight for the people, they cower just like the corporate Democrats that they complained so much about when they were running. We don't have a true leader in this country. We don't have anyone that has the guts, that has the balls, that has the audacity to push back against the establishment. And this is why the left does not win in this country. This is why we don't have a left. Everyone is thinking about their self. Colombia's victory This should be on everyone's radar, everyone's, and not in reference to fear, right? Because some people are talking about this election today and they're telling you you should be afraid. We need to be afraid because leftists and progressives are winning in the global South and it could spread to the United States. We need to be afraid. No, we need to be afraid of what we have here right now. We need to be afraid of the capitalist system that we have in this country, in the wealthiest country in the world, where we can't even afford to buy gas. That's what we need to be afraid of. Not these individuals who are really taking the lead and making real change in the global South. Congratulations to Gustavo and to Francia. Congratulations. It's a damn shame we don't have that here. Nobody. They're all liars. So it goes back into the article here and it says Petro 62 had already seen 2 failed presidential bids in 2010 and 2018. Sunday's runoff vote suggests that he has finally overcome the hesitation of voters who once saw him a radical left-wing outsider. No small feat for a politician looking to win over one of South America's most conservative countries. What does that tell you? One of the most conservative countries in South America, and they voted for the leftist leaders. You know why? Because the people connected over the issues. Regardless if they were conservative or not, the people were tired of being mistreated. The people were tired of being neglected. Now, some people had things to say about this. Ajamu, Baraka, the masses are making history in Colombia. They are calling it Frapatico historical. U.S. imperialism remains on the run in our continent, but the fight continues until we eject U.S. colonialism from all of our territories. From all of our territories. Shout out to Ajamu. Now, what did he run on? Because I think this is important for people to see. So let me go over here. There were a couple of things I did want to highlight. Now, this is before he won. Colombia candidate Petro says human campaign will carry him to victory. So he focused on the people. So here we go here. Petro, a former M19 guerrilla and current senator, and Hernandez, an ex-mayor who unexpectedly passed to a second round on anti-corruption promises, are tied in polling ahead of the vote to replace President Yvonne J. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, J. Who cannot run again? Petro, oh no. Here we go. I don't know why it's doing that when okay, here we go. Petro has promised a battery of social programs for the deeply polarized country where violence from a 6-decade conflict is ongoing and nearly 50% of people live in some form of poverty. Nearly 50%, you guys. Nearly 50% of people live in some form of poverty. Wow. Once I'm inaugurated, I would immediately, I don't know why it's doing that. This website is weird. Once I'm inaugurated, I will immediately invite my opponents to talk and establish a channel to firm up the democratic reforms that Colombia needs to not break down. If I am elected, the new atmosphere will be one with rhetoric that builds peace, not hate. Petro said his campaign has shifted its strategy away from large rallies where bodyguards protected him on stage with anti-ballistic shields, toward more personal visits at people's homes where he sometimes spends the night. That would never happen here. So he realized you had to get back to kitchen table politics, where the politician is actually speaking to people in their home, not just at these large rallies where the majority of people don't get to interact with them on a personal level. So that's something that he did differently. We had to practically have armor plating, which caused a margin of separation from the people. It's not my taste. So we changed the strategy for one that is safer, but more human. Both Petro and Hernandez have said their lives have been threatened during the campaign, with Hernandez saying on Thursday he will appear only virtually at events. Now, again, this is before he won. So they had their lives threatened, which does not surprise me. He goes on to say, oh, I don't like this website. It keeps doing that. Okay, Petro said his first priority in office will be to fight hunger, especially among young children. So that's a big one. Then he wants to bolster agriculture, tourism, and production of legal cannabis so that Colombia can begin to replace income from top exports of oil and coal. In the medium term, what we propose is nutritional sovereignty, energy sovereignty, with clean energy, a process to disconnect from what I call the fossil economy, coal and oil, and connect with agriculture and industrialization. So you see, even he's looking at clean energy. So this is interesting. Again, huge win for Colombia. So there you go. I see my comrade JB Fonts in the chat. Colombia! Thanks for the super chat, AJF. There is a reason we can send so much billions to Ukraine. We make our own sovereign currency. Most others are backed by the US dollar. Thank you so much for that, AJF. AJF. DJ Khaled. Thank you so much for the tip, Roger Meadows. Okay, Colombia, you got corporations on the ropes. Now is the time to pass an amendment to your constitution that abolishes all corporations, making them unconstitutional. That was our mistake. When FDR was in office, he did not democratize the workplace via worker co-ops, only regulated them via union-friendly law. By leaving corporations in place, it gave them the chance to come back, and come back they did with a vengeance. That's a good point, Roger. That is a good point. Woohoo! At Kid. Sabby, please bring on future guests Ralph Nader, Abby Martin, if possible. Okay, yeah. I still can't find, okay. I don't have contact information for Ralph Nader. The only thing I was able to find, or someone sent to me, it was for his radio site, and it's a form that you fill out. But again, it's a form. I filled out that form, but I don't think that's even to get him to come on to your show. I think that's to send him information for his radio show. Abby Martin, I've reached out to before. I have not heard back from her, but I can reach out again. But yeah, so if anybody knows Ralph Nader, let me know, because I could not. Usually I can find something, but that one is really hard to find. So yeah. All right, guys, I know that was a lot of information tonight. We're coming up around 9:30. I do want to let you guys know I will not be going live on Wednesdays anymore. I'm switching that to Thursday nights. So you'll see me Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So I'll have Wednesday night free. So that's a swap. If you haven't signed up for my newsletter, please be sure to do that. It's pinned to the top of the live chat. That's how you'll get alerts every time I go live. You can't rely on YouTube to do it for you. People have told me some people get them, some people don't get them. Just being honest with you. What's that, Eric? Thursday at 8, right? Yes, Thursday at 8. I'm actually going to send out a newsletter announcement because this is really how you this is really how a lot of people know what's going on over here. Newsletter announcement, letting you guys know my schedule and what it's going to be going forward starting this week. And then also, I am going to remind all of you on my YouTube channel, there's a community tab. I think all of us have this I think everyone that's monetized has it. I'll say that. There's a community tab. If for whatever reason something happens and I can't go live, I'll usually put something in that community tab. So I can get better about posting things there on a regular, but definitely make sure you sign up for the newsletter because that's pretty much the best way you're going to keep track with me. Also, hopefully starting this week, if not, definitely next week, I am going to be returning to articles again on Substack. It's been a long time. So I'm going to offer free ones and I'm going to offer paid ones. But I have all my topics picked out now. So in my research, so I can go back into that. So look forward to that again. That'll all be through my newsletter and all of that jazz. And also don't forget, guys, follow me on Call-In. We had a great call-in show Friday night. Jimmy Dore came into the call and we were talking about, presidential future 2024 and how he felt about thinking about running and stuff like that. And so I think if you haven't listened to that conversation, you should definitely check it out. Case Study QB was there too. And so was Nick, my comrade from RBN. So check me out there. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. Again, all the links are in the details tabs of my videos. I'm also on Spotify and iHeart Radio. Those should be linked as well. So some of my interviews that you see on YouTube, if you just want to listen to the audio, like you're driving or something, you can find those on Spotify and iHeart Radio. And I think Apple too, although I don't have an iPhone, so I don't know. It's supposed to be linking in there, but I don't know. I don't know. What's that, Kay? Need to get Chris Smalls or Tanisha Grant on your show. Chris Smalls came on last year. I have not been able to get a hold of him since they won. So I reached out to him. He has not responded. And that is pretty much about it. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight, guys. It's time for me to go. It's time for me to say goodbye. All right, Thursday, Sabby and JB show on RBN. We have a fun one for you guys. I'm not giving away the topic, but it's going to be fun. It'll be a fun time. But other than that, guys, have a good night. And yes, Roger, I'll call Angela. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.